Good morning once again from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Hi, I'm Håkan Johnson. I'm the chairman and president of Covestro LLC, and I want to welcome everyone to the third and final day of this year's THINC30 Summit. At this point, I also want to take a moment to thank our CSR and sustainability team, as well as our communications and technical teams for putting together such an outstanding summit this year again. I'm so proud of their commitment to this event, which is one of Covestro's signature social innovation initiatives. So those of you logging on for the first time, thank you for joining us. And to all who are rejoining as part of our THINC30 community, it's great to have you back one more time for today's session on economic empowerment. 4 years ago, when we hosted our first THINC30, it felt like we had time to convene the Pittsburgh community, time to begin working together, time to advance the 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals throughout the region. Today, I must say, it feels quite different. Given everything we'd experienced this year, not only is our work around the goals more relevant than ever, it's taken on a distinct urgency. With its disparities in public health or education, racial and gender inequality, or food and economic insecurity, all the issues we're facing today are rooted in imbalances that are clearly unsustainable, which is precisely why they are among the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And yet another reason why it's so important for us to use them as a guide as we work to correct those imbalances. At Covestro, we have placed the goals at the core of our innovation, our R&D, our approach to circularity and carbon capture, our policies, practices, and our social innovation. Clearly, they are at the center of THINC30, with goal number 17, partnerships for the goals, being our North Star in the effort to foster collaborations that push the work forward. Over the last 2 sessions, we've had a series of insightful conversations about the various issues related to social and environmental equity. We've heard from local, regional, and national leaders who are in the field doing the hard work to right the imbalances. And we've learned about successful initiatives that we can scale up and replicate in other parts of the region, and indeed the country. This morning, economic empowerment is the subject we're dealing with, and the overarching question for our panelists and speakers is this: as we plan our economic recovery, how do we ensure that everyone has a fair shot to participate and to prosper? And I'm really looking forward to learning what they have to say. And now, to give you more details about what's on today's agenda, please welcome my colleague, Rebecca LeCour. Rebecca.
Thank you, Håkan. Thank you, Covestro. Thank you, all of our great technical teams and all of my colleagues that have been involved in this event. We couldn't do it without you. This is one of the reasons THINC30 has lasted so many years, because we have so much support internally from the leadership level, and we're very, very excited. And a little sad that it's coming to an end. So welcome to the third and last day of THINC30. As Håkan mentioned, today's theme is economic empowerment. And once again, a very special thank you to all of our speakers and panelists. We could not do this without you, and we could not do it without the great work that you're engaged in. And even though we weren't all able to be together in person this year, I do feel this new energy around these important topics. It's been so nice to spend time with all of you over the last 3 days. And it reminds me of how proud I am of all of you and all of the great work that's going on in this region. But as always, we have more work to do. I've said it every day as we've kicked off THINC30, and I'll say it one more time: making connections and the UN Sustainable Development Goal, number 17, partnership for the goals, will always be front and center for THINC30, whether it's in person or virtual. We've spent our time talking about social resilience, and we've heard from experts in food security, public health, education, community development, and the nonprofit sector. And we talked about environmental equity with topics like healthy neighborhoods, environmental justice, sustainability business strategy, and the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And today we conclude day number 3 with wide-ranging topics and discussions on something very important: economic empowerment. There is so much at stake in our world, in our country, and in all of our communities. You're all here because you believe that, and you're doing great work, and you're engaged and participating in these discussions. So I just ask that in the coming weeks that are critical, in the coming months and years, that you continue being engaged. Be a voice for someone who doesn't have a voice. Challenge the status quo and continue to be involved, because it will take all of us together in collaboration to really make change. So before we jump into some of our great topics and discussions this morning, just a few housekeeping items. Again, a reminder that if you have questions for the live panels, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. That's where we will collect the questions and field them to the panelists. If you want to discuss things in chat throughout the morning with all of the colleagues, leave information, links, general questions, please use the chat button as we're able to capture that. We also invite our panelists when they're done with their discussions to go back and look in chat and answer things that others may have asked. At the end of the day, we will have one breakout session. That's your opportunity to roll your sleeves up, get more engaged, ask some questions, and network and talk to other attendees. And we'll have more information at that for the end of the day. And we encourage you to use Covestro's website at www.covestro.us.com/think30. You can find all of the agendas for all three of our days, speaker bios and background, and there's also a link to the live event if you missed some of the other days. All the information's there. And of course, we want to continue seeing your great photos of attending the event, and you can tweet them at #THINC30. Okay, let's get started.
Good morning. My name is James Myers Jr., Director of Community and Business Development at Riverside Center for Innovation. I would like to extend a big thank you to Covestro for having us here this morning to speak on such an important topic as economic empowerment. At Riverside Center for Innovation, our mission is to build a diverse entrepreneurial ecosystem throughout southwestern Pennsylvania. Today, we're focusing on how Pittsburgh can and should step up its support for female and minority-owned businesses, which was actually one of the 11 policy recommendations made by the Pittsburgh Gender Equity Commission back in July. Female and minority entrepreneurs have long faced systematic business disadvantages ranging from lack of access to capital and lending to high interest rates to lack of mentoring networks, all exacerbated by the pandemic. With our three panelists today, we'll look at the challenges and potential solutions. Please welcome Diamante Walker, Deputy Executive Director of the Urban Redevelopment Authority of Pittsburgh, Tina Daniels, the founder and CEO of Concrete Rose Construction, and Chris Bradley, President of CS Supplies. The first set of questions is for our two entrepreneurs, Tina first and then Christopher. So Tina, tell us a little bit about your company and the biggest challenges you faced since launching your business. Did you encounter any of the historical barriers like access to capital and resources? Were there any opportunities that made the difference? And then how is your business actually faring during the pandemic? I know that's a loaded question, but we're really interested in hearing about your narrative as an entrepreneur, being a female and a minority, Tina.
Good morning, James. And I want to send a thank you to Covestro for having us. And I'll try to remember everything you said. So Concrete Rose is a construction company that focuses on new builds and residential complete rehabs and commercial build outs. We founded in 2019. One of my issues first starting out was learning about the back office part of it and exactly what was all needed and structuring up. And access to capital was a barrier. And the two things that helped me greatly was a program through the Riverside Center of Innovation called BizFit. And also urban redevelopment had a lot of microloans for new and small businesses, which typically traditional banks do not want to give the smaller loans that new businesses really need to kind of just get access to equipment and maybe cover payroll for a little bit, that you may not qualify for the larger money because you're a smaller business and a newer business. So those two things were very helpful in the beginning stages of my business.
I would ask you, were there any opportunities that made a big difference with your company, Tina?
So again, one of my larger contracts, again, was through the URA. It was a roofathon program they were doing. So it was my first large contract. And after I've done that and completed that successfully, a lot of different companies started to connect with me to help them along with their programs. But just getting my foot in the door and having the ability to showcase my work was a great asset to just getting my name out there and getting what I can do out there.
Sounds good, Tina. I know we're really proud of you at Riverside Center for Innovation, and we see you in a lot of publications, online, as everybody is tapping into virtual platforms and becoming digital citizens. Tell us a little bit of how your business is actually faring during the pandemic.
So for the pandemic, as everyone, 2020 was kind of lined up to be a big year for us. We had a lot of projects scheduled out that were completely put on hold. Some of them were not put back online yet because clients are just a little leery about spending funds right now and not sure and how the market's going to go. So what I ended up having to do was the term that seemed to be the term of the year was pivot. So instead of kind of rolling out larger projects, what I did was focus on completing mid-level to smaller projects and just turn those out quickly. And that's what we're still doing. That's the model we're still running. So it wasn't kind of where I seen myself at for this year, but it still was enough to keep me going and viable.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Tina. You have definitely a very inspirational story as an entrepreneur. I do want to give Chris a little bit of time to answer those questions that I went over leading into your narrative. So Chris, tell us a little bit about your company and the biggest challenges you faced since launching the business, CL Supplies.
Sure. Thanks, James. I just want to thank everyone here at Covestro for having us today. So CL Supplies actually is a wholesale supply chain company. Actually began in 2018 doing business overseas, actually. So I have a kind of unique story where I have an international approach, but I learned very quickly through the DBRC, which is the Diversity Business Resource Center, being able to look locally and to do business locally. So I have the capacity to supply personal protective equipment from a medium to large scale, and work with organizations, also government entities as well, all over the world, supplying different personal protective equipment there.
Thank you for that, Chris. Now, a question for you, coming from like a personal standpoint as a business owner, did you encounter any historical barriers like access to capital and resources?
Yes. I mean, it's tough getting in the space of supply chain. Being able to have adequate capital was a difficult hurdle, but the Urban Redevelopment Authority definitely stepped in. The DBRC, as well as Tina had mentioned, the BizFit, they did provide gaps. They were able to build bridges to fill some of those gaps with capital. Absolutely.
Great. That's great to hear. And I know both of you, Tina and Chris, are alumni of Pitt's Institute of Entrepreneurial Excellence program, as BizFit kind of transitioned you over to the university and their Small Business Development Center. But also tell us about what other opportunities that actually made a difference.
Was that for Chris, James?
Yeah, that's actually for Chris too.
Okay.
Yes. It was the United States Commercial Services and also Southwestern Pennsylvania Commission. Both offer programs and opportunities that allow me to engage in businesses internationally, but also develop relationships locally as well, which was very big for a small company like myself.
We're pleased to hear that. We're pleased to hear that, Chris. Now, tell us a little bit about how your business is actually faring during the pandemic.
Well, thanks to the Urban Redevelopment Authority, I'd just like to definitely give a shout out because they were able to provide a COVID-19 relief loan that was able to help my small company be able to transition to more of an e-commerce space and also be able to buy inventory during this time. It was a lot of changes, a lot of things that were you could not really plan for, but the Urban Redevelopment Authority really stepped in with an emergency loan, a recovery loan that allowed me to purchase inventory and also transition my company to be more e-commerce space. So, it's just been a blessing to be a part of this time right now, even though it's an unfortunate time.
Thank you for that, Chris. I would say you, as well as Tina, y'all have pretty awesome stories as entrepreneurs in Southwestern Pennsylvania as minorities and, as Tina as a female entrepreneur. But I do want to kind of lean into a conversation with my colleague, Diamante. So, Diamante, please tell us about the Urban Redevelopment Authority's initiatives supporting women and minority-owned small businesses. Also, what opportunities and resources are you making available? And why is this a priority area for your organization? I know that's kind of a three-pronged question, but I'll give you a little bit of time. And if you need some pointers, please ask me.
Absolutely. Well, first, I'd like to thank you, James, RCI, and Covestro for having me here. It is such an honor to sit on a panel with you and Tina and Chris. And I am so proud of the growth and development that's occurred in both of these businesses. And I would say that they've done a pretty good commercial here for the URA. I didn't anticipate it, but it feels good to know that the work that we embarked on back in 2017 to revamp the URA's minority and women business program, that work, that those seeds are now bearing fruit, and that fruit is made manifest in the form of Concrete Rose and CS Supply. So this is a full circle 360 moment here. So with that, I will say that, in 2017, I started with the URA as the MWBE program officer, and the focus was really to shift the way that we do business with minorities and women so I think that the approach back then was more about charity and more about how we can help these businesses. And so I wanted to sort of shift that thinking to understand that it is an economic imperative to do business with diverse companies. We are not doing them any favors. Tina had started her company and had a dream well before the URA had its program in place, and Chris, the same way. So it has really been about matching the entrepreneurial energy that's already available in our ecosystem. And so a suite of programs were developed with that thinking, and the sort of seminal program that came out of that was the microloan program. So in doing my assessment at the URA, one of the things that we noticed immediately as we started to revamp the program is that we were not lending to minorities and women at a rate that we would deem respectable. And so the issue was not any intent not to lend, but we didn't have a product that met the need. That small, small amount of money, that's first money in to say, we believe in your dream. We're going to invest in you. We're going to help you meet payroll. We're going to help you scale. And so we developed that program with RCI as one of our, in the Chatham Women's Business Center and a few others, really informing us about what is happening on the ground with entrepreneurs. The reason why that's so important is because now that we are in a COVID environment, the URA was able to be a first mover in providing emergency loan fund assistance in light of COVID, because we took the microloan program and essentially adapted it to the issues that were emerging relative to COVID. So our ELF program is essentially our microloan program, but again, focusing on those acute needs for businesses that were doing well before the pandemic and that we want to see continue to be in business after the pandemic. And so along with that, and then as we continue to talk to entrepreneurs, continue to talk to our partners, we learned that e-commerce was a big gap. in that folks needed to figure out a way to get online. So we partnered with Neighborhood Allies to create the GoGo program. And Chris talked a little bit about it being able to transition into e-commerce. And so the way that I will wrap this up is by saying that more importantly than providing access to capital or providing that technical assistance, I think what's really important for the URA is that we build these relationships and they not be rooted in any type of rhetoric. I'm not going to come and tell you that I believe in your business. I want to show you that I believe in your business by giving you that first contract. And so, the opportunities that Tina is talking about is we believe in concrete roads. And so we wanted Tina to work on URA projects because her product is that solid. We have Chris's samples of, his hand sanitizer. I have a bottle sitting right here. And so we use the products from the businesses that we believe in and that we invest in. And I think that sends a signal to the market to say that if the public sector is investing and the public sector is putting taxpayer money on the table to support these businesses, then it only makes common sense that the private sector would do the same. So the goal is not for the URA to be the end-all, be-all for these companies. It is for us to be a first mover and to send that strong market signal that it is time to invest and work with minority and women-owned businesses.
Thank you for that, Diamante. That was a detailed and informative answer. I almost want to say, you got my vote.
Not running for anything, but okay.
Yeah, I'm behind you, whatever comes up. But I would say that also shows that, investing in female and minority entrepreneurs is a priority for the Urban Redevelopment Authority. So we're very pleased to hear, all the information that you just relayed. So I have a question for you, Diamante, as well as our entrepreneurial panelists. Is Pittsburgh nurturing a diverse entrepreneurial ecosystem? Whether you answer yes or no, please give us an example of why. So I know before we started off with Tina, I'll actually lean into you first, Chris, in terms of answering that question.
Sure. As a small business owner, it's very difficult to manage your time and just being able to know what resources out there. The Diversity Business Resource Center has really made a life-changing impact positively for my company, just because they were able to introduce me to the URA, to the innovation, the Center for Innovation at Pitt, and also other resources throughout Pittsburgh, even the Carnegie Library. There's a program that, growing up in the city of Pittsburgh, I had no idea that there were so many free resources here in the city. But what happens is, from a small business standpoint, you don't know where to go, you don't know where to turn to, and these organizations like the URA and like the DBRC, they're vital, and that's why I'm a huge proponent, and I refer small businesses all the time because you can get overwhelmed with not knowing what's out there. And so I believe that there's a strong push now to be able to get small businesses in the adequate position to be successful.
Thank you for that, Chris. Tina, do you need me to repeat the question, or?
Could you repeat it for me, James?
Definitely can for you, Tina. Is Pittsburgh nurturing a diverse entrepreneurial ecosystem? Whether you answer yes or no, please give us an example or two of why.
Okay, so I think not too long ago, the answer would have been no. But I also think that right now there is just a push and a willingness to expose the need to include minority companies into a lot of things, like the panel we're having right now, like the URA giving opportunities, and not just myself, but many other smaller minority companies too, to kind of just get their foot in the door and showcase themselves. So now, in addition to that, I do think there's room for growth, because once you get your one shot, or not one shot, but a shot with the URA and a chance to showcase your business, like Diamante had mentioned, it can't be the end all be all. How do you scale? How do you then get a seat at the table of other opportunities and be taken seriously? So I do think there's room for growth, for that to be a real conversation and for actions to be behind the conversation, because panels and conversations are great, but if there's no action after, then it's really all for naught.
Thank you for providing that answer for us, Tina. That was insightful, especially coming from your experience as an entrepreneur, right? So we're definitely taking a look at that, and pleased to hear that, we're actually headed in the right direction. So Diamante, do you need me to repeat the question, or you kind of,
No,
based off? You got it? Okay.
I think I got it.
Right.
My answer is going to mirror Tina's in a lot of ways. I think that, for me, it's not a question of do we have an entrepreneurial ecosystem for minority and women-owned businesses. It's how healthy is it? And so an ecosystem is a natural thing, right? But we have to see, are businesses growing? Are they vital? Are they healthy? Are they facing barriers and challenges because of equitable issues that are at work in our larger ecosystem? And so I think the answer to that in Pittsburgh is going to be yes. I mean, if we're very honest with ourselves, the answer is yes. But I will say that over the last 2.5 years, I've seen us start to try to transition from having the conversation to actually doing something about it. So there are a lot of panels, a lot of discussions, a lot of focus groups about, diagnosing the problem. But I think we need to get to the script. What is the script? And the script is diverse business utilization. It is to turn this from thinking about these things in terms of nouns and discussion points, and to start looking at budgets and bottom lines, and whether or not your company is actually living up to whatever values it might be espousing about being diverse and inclusive. And so we see this on the private sector. Like, I can do a lot at the URA to enforce diversity goals and diversity utilization and expand our networks. But I've also been working with my partners in the private sector to also look at their processes and procedures to determine whether or not they are contributing to a healthy ecosystem. It can't all be the public sector. This is a private-public partnership that has to be enabled. The private sector has way more dollars in their ecosystem than we do to transform a business like two of the businesses that we're talking to today. So I think that we are getting better at it. I think that we need to do more work. I think it needs to be a continuous learning loop, and that, we really need to challenge ourselves and we shouldn't be creating solutions that are created in our own image. These have got to be solutions that are created in the image and intended for the businesses that we say we want to support and serve. So I know that we did a lot of work with Forward Cities to try to bring this ecosystem together and really build a critical mass. And so I'm looking forward to continuing that work so that it's not so difficult to do some of the wayfinding that's necessary to scale businesses and to grow. Because you want to start, but we've also got to focus on whether or not that ecosystem is fostering growth.
Thank you for that, Diamante. All good points from our panelists. This is a very fruitful discussion. I want to make sure, for sake of time, that we actually get to some of the questions from our panelists. But there's 2 more questions that we'll go over in terms of what we're trying to do here today. So PNC Bank, PNC Foundation recently announced that it's investing $10 million in minority-owned businesses in Pittsburgh. How important is this, and how important is it for other banks to follow suit? Diamante, we'll start off with you this time.
Okay, so I'd first like to thank the PNC Foundation for the $10 million investment in the URA's economic justice strategy. And so they've dedicated $10 million to looking at how we can provide more access to capital to minority and women-owned businesses, as well as do some other creative interventions, like the work that you've already seen with helping folks adjust to COVID. So the Minority Growth and Business Fund program is a scale-up of our microloan program to address the critical needs that companies like Tina and Chris are going to face as they start to grow and take on more employees and bigger contracts. So that's up to $100,000 to provide very low interest rate loans to get them over that hump. So very grateful for that investment. And absolutely, we need more banks to follow. I mean, we're talking about economic injustice, and we're looking at those UN SDG goals. You can't do it without capital. You can't do it without resources. The URA has positioned itself as a partner on the ground that's built the relationships with these businesses. So when it's time to lend, we don't have to say we don't know where the businesses are. We know where they are. They're in our cell phones. They're in our text messages. And so we have those relationships, and we can deploy money very, very quickly to get capital out the door and into the hands and coffers of these businesses that are in need.
Thank you for that, Diamante. We have a pretty engaging session going here right now. So we're getting a lot of questions from the audience and the participants. So we're going to go into those questions a little bit because I think they want to hear a little bit more about the entrepreneurial journey of you, Chris, as well as Tina. So the first question we got from the audience is, Chris, have you gone through any type of diversity-owned certification programs as a means of getting more contracts?
I'm sorry, James, can you repeat that question again, please?
No problem. Have you gone through any type of women or diversity-owned certification programs as a means of getting more contracts? So PAUCP certified, Section 3, kind of give us a little bit more details on that.
Oh, yes. I have gone through the PAUCP certification as well as the National Minority Business Enterprise certification as well. And that has allowed me to, be able to get contracts. One thing I do want to say, you have to put in the effort and the work, though. Being able to market yourself, having a solid website, strong capability statement, those things that, a lot of the resources around Pittsburgh that helped me out with, I was able to now position my company in a better way with the certification. So it kind of goes hand in hand. The certifications are good. But as a small business owner, have to do your part as well through marketing and strategic planning.
Thank you for that, Chris. Tina, do you want to enlighten us a little bit about the minority and women certifications you've picked up, and has it actually allowed you to gain more contracts?
So yes, thanks for that question, Five. I did apply for and received my PAUCP certification, Section 3. I've also I have a landscaping division, so I did a lot of infrastructure education and certification on that. And I also have lead abatement certifications. I think that, talent will get you to a certain level, but you have to practice your skill. And so I take advantage of any certifications, any extra trainings, because it only enhances my ability to gain more contracts, and it has helped me gain more contracts.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Tina. So I got a question for you, Diamante. It's coming from a participant who is a minority business owner, but their business isn't considered, inside of the city of Pittsburgh. Why her question more is, why doesn't the URA assist with minority businesses not within the city, but the business needs are still there for businesses outside the city, basically? I'm trying to kind of paraphrase her question.
I read it here. I can see the Q&A window, so I believe I read that question. So the answer to that is that the URA is by nature of its charter with the state, is only empowered to work within the city of Pittsburgh boundaries. So we do not have jurisdiction outside of the city of Pittsburgh. So we try to partner with organizations like the Allegheny County Economic Development Agency, which is a completely separate agency that also offers some level of business programming and support. So while we receive a lot of folks who come to us from the county and we try to be as helpful as we can, we are not permitted to lend to those that do not have a city-based address. So, but when we talk about an ecosystem, I mean, one of the things that I've worked on is how can we build a bridge to the county so that people have a seamless experience, and it doesn't seem like the URA is doing great work in the city and then there's nothing happening in the county. We are working to fix that and to try to mirror and model some programs that can take a more regional versus parochial approach. But it is a matter of law as to why the URA cannot work outside of the city of Pittsburgh boundaries.
Thank you for that, Diamante. And I know I did have one question that actually came in for myself in regards to BizFit. So BizFit is part of our business development programming at RCI. It's sort of like a 3-2-1 launch liftoff. You come in at BizFit Tier 3 in the idea stage, startup or an existing business, looking to more or less develop your business plan, additional resources in terms of connecting with our pro bono legal services program with Reed Smith. We go over some insurance issues. And then after you come out of just kind of building blocks of Tier 3, we lift you off to Tier 2, where we try to make sure that you're actually driving some revenue. Once you graduate out of the Tier 2 program, we actually hand you off to Pitt's Institute of Entrepreneurial Excellence program and the Power to Prosper with their Pitt SBDC. And at that point, you're actually working on your business full time. So it's no longer a hobby or something you're doing on the side. You're actually a full-time entrepreneur. But if anybody has any more additional questions about BizFit, please feel free to reach out to me. I will leave my contact information with Covestro, but I also wanted to take in a little bit more questions before we run out of time. So our next question is coming for Diamante again as well. Are there plans to expand the small and minority business support by the URA in 2021, seeing as though it has been tremendously successful for groups like Concrete Roads and CS Supplies?
Very short answer. Absolutely. We are just getting started. Concrete Roads and CS Supplies are just two examples of businesses that we've supported. If you go to ura.org, you will see a list of the businesses that we've been working with, and we intend to expand our reach and deepen our work in 2021. Absolutely.
Thank you for that, Diamante. Tina, we have a question for you. What's the outlook for your construction company in 2021 and beyond? Do you see development in Pittsburgh continuing to increase?
I do. I see I've been at conversations with developers that are planning projects out into 2025. So my goal is to expand on our landscaping division. We are always going to be in residential because that's just where my heart is. And we also are going to move into lead-based paint abatement.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So before, I know we're running a little short on time, but I do want to get to this question. So Tina and Christopher, what's the banking landscape look like for small business owners like yourself, right? And do you feel confident that you'll have access to capital through the traditional banks going forward?
You want to take this one, Chris, or you?
Go ahead, Tina.
Okay.
I think the audience wants to hear from both.
Okay. So for me, I am new. I just feel, even though I've been doing this for a while, I just recently structured my company legally in 2019. So a barrier for me right now is just how new I am. Even though I have great projects and I've had examples of doing great work, traditional banks want to see length of time in business, wants to see a long history of projections and profits, and I just don't have that right now. So for myself, I do continue to see capital as a barrier maybe for the next couple of years. So I move my models a little differently to kind of deal with that.
Sounds good. Chris, do you want to chime in to add some questions, add a little bit to that question? But Diamante, I have a question I want to close you out with. So Chris, if you can be brief, I want to move right over to Diamante.
10 seconds. I do believe that there's some places for these banks to work more with the small businesses, just because small business makes up such a large percentage of the GDP. I think these conversations with the URA and the DBRC with the banks, your organizations being the liaison, can really help small businesses, basically bridge the gap between the capital and not having that.
Sounds good. Thank you for that, Chris. And Diamante, as we close out, I think the audience wants to know, how did you become so passionate about your work?
It's my lived experience. So I come from the Hill District community, and I say everything you love about me is because I'm from the Hill District. Everything you don't like about me is because I'm from the Hill District. And so we are an entrepreneurial, enterprising people, and I'm very passionate about helping to create better communities than the one that I grew up in.
Great answer, Diamante. So I know we have run short on time. This was a great panel discussion, informative, fruitful, and a conversation of substance. My name is James Myers Jr., Director of Community and Business Development at Riverside Center for Innovation. And thank you all for tuning in virtually to this platform today. And we look forward to connecting with you. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sally McCready, and I am the Director of Community Affairs and Corporate Social Responsibility for PNC Bank and the Chair and President of the PNC Foundation. It's a pleasure to be part of the 2020 THINC30 Summit. At PNC, we have a long-standing commitment to our communities, rooted in the belief that our success is proportionate to the prosperity we help create in the places where we live and work. With this responsibility in mind, in April, we announced $30 million in charitable support for coronavirus relief efforts, and more recently, a $1 billion commitment to help end systemic racism and support the economic empowerment of African American and low and moderate income communities. Our CEO, Bill Demchak, and our entire executive committee acted deliberately and urgently to determine PNC's role in this movement and where our organization could make the greatest impact. We've learned a lot of lessons over the past 16 years through Grow Up Great, our signature philanthropic initiative to address early childhood education. One of those lessons is that grants are important for strengthening communities, but they're only one part of the puzzle. We've learned through our efforts in early childhood education that when a company like PNC lends its corporate voice to a cause and puts its weight behind an issue, transformative change is possible. That's why our billion-dollar commitment is not just philanthropic in nature. It includes an expansion of our established employee volunteerism program to incorporate qualifying social justice and economic empowerment nonprofits. And the majority of this commitment will come to life through our work in community development banking. PNC's community development banking team works to boost the quality of life in low and moderate income neighborhoods through financial education, consumer programs, and community development lending and investments. Our significant accomplishments in this space have earned PNC an outstanding rating under the Community Reinvestment Act since those examinations began more than 40 years ago. Our community development banking team regularly works with the PNC Foundation and others across the organization to bolster underserved neighborhoods. A recent notable example of this type of collaboration was a $10 million program-related investment to provide further economic relief to local minority-owned businesses and entrepreneurs within the city of Pittsburgh. 15% of that funding is directed towards childcare centers, which feels especially important as quite often the operators of the childcare are women of color, and the availability of childcare is so important to our economic recovery. This program-related investment is a terrific example of the way in which we intend to approach our community development banking efforts going forward, with a more deliberate focus on the African American community. Though PNC has always aimed to provide significant support for low and moderate income, as well as diverse communities, the specific focus on racial equity and social justice are somewhat new areas of focus from a philanthropic perspective. As such, we are taking the time to listen, learn, and gain understandings of the organizations and the opportunities before us. We want to ensure that our contributions are able to make the greatest impact possible. PNC's work for and commitment to our communities has never felt more important, and we are excited about the opportunities ahead of us. We know when our communities thrive, we all thrive. Thank you.
Good morning. Welcome everyone. My name is Evan Frazier. I head up community affairs for Highmark Health across our enterprise. We're based right here in Pittsburgh. But today, I'm here to talk to you about a program that I'm really passionate about, the Advanced Leadership Initiative, or TALI for short. Launched in 2018, TALI's mission is to dramatically improve the presence of African Americans in executive leadership roles throughout our region for for-profit companies as well as nonprofit organizations. Part of TALI's vision is to create a more diverse, inclusive, and prosperous community. Key to TALI's initial success is its engaged network of mentors, all of whom are local leaders committed to advancing diversity. What distinguishes Tally from other programs is its signature program called the Executive Leadership Academy, created in partnership with Carnegie Mellon's Tepper School of Business. And it focuses on 4 key pillars: customized world-class curriculum, executive coaching, executive mentorship, and the cohort experience. What inspired me to help make Tally a reality in Pittsburgh was really a clear recognition that the number of African Americans represented in the executive level in our region just simply was not acceptable. And there wasn't a clear mechanism that was going to help facilitate the change that was needed. As a Black professional and executive, I felt a sense of responsibility, and also felt that I had an understanding of what might be needed. And I know that others also had that same sense that we could make a difference. So excited to be here today. Before I introduce the panelists today, first I want to say thank you to Hawken Johnson. He's an incredible, what an incredible leader of Covestro he is. Christine Bryant, Rebecca LaCour, Dina Clark, Aaron Lockhart, Ben Renwick, all the people who are really making this THINC30 event so successful. Thank you all. I am honored to be here today with 2 key Tally stakeholders and champions. Executive mentor, Mr. Nolan Chung, who heads up the National Intellectual Property Practice at Denton's, Cohen, and Grigsby, and Tally's cohort alum and now advisory board member, who was a Tally mentee, Miss Stephanie Jasper. Stephanie is PNC's Senior Vice President and Senior Operational Risk Officer for Technology, Security, and HR. So I'd like to welcome all of those wonderful individuals to this panel discussion. And so I'd just like to start and have each of them just kind of introduce yourselves and just share kind of a opening remark in your connection with the Advanced Leadership Initiative, if you would. Nolan?
Good morning, Evan. Good morning, Stephanie. Good morning, everyone out there. First of all, thank you, Evan. You mean the world to me when you asked me to be a part of this program. It was the best thing that I've ever done, our best program I've been a part of. It's really done a lot. And I want to thank my friends at my alma mater, Covestro, for inviting me back. Got a lot of great friends out there, and you've been a part of my formative years. And where I am today is because of all my experience at Bayer Material Science and Covestro. But most of you know, I'm from Jersey. Don't hold that against me, you know. I started off as a chemical engineer, became a patent lawyer, and spent most of my career at Bayer Material Science. And in 2012, went to a law firm here in Pittsburgh called Cohen and Grigsby, headed up the IP practice, and been having a lot of fun. When I started at Bayer Material Science, I started out with a baby daughter in 1996, and now she's in her 2nd year in med school. And I got 2 more daughters, and all of them will be in college or graduate school next year. So I'll be really poor for a while. But it's been a great program, and, looking forward to talking more about it, Evan.
Thank you. Thank you. I can relate to college, kids being in college and being poor. I understand that. Stephanie.
Good morning, Evan. Good morning, Nolan, and everyone that is joining us remotely and virtually today. So I was part of the very first Tally cohort. That was a very, very special class, and I was privileged to be part of that class. I have been a Pittsburgher since 1997, was not born and raised here. I'm originally from Erie, Pennsylvania. And came here with my significant other, Mike. So he was born and raised here. And we also are in the category of college-age children and soon-to-be college-age children and, feeling the pinch of those tuition payments. So, and in addition to that, I have a 11-year-old who will give us a little bit of a break between tuition payments for college, but we'll be right back at it. And another few years. So, but I'm very happy to be part of the panel and can't wait to kind of get into and discuss the experience as a mentee.
Great. Thank you both. So fortunate to have both of you here, true champions of Tally. So why don't we start with you, Nolan? From the mentor perspective, how do you help mentees navigate the balance between systematic racism and career success? And also, how do you truly listen to what Tally mentees might be saying, even by what they're not saying?
Great question, and thanks for asking that, Evan. And for the crowd in there, in case you didn't notice, I'm Asian American, right? So in case you haven't, but when you get into a relationship, right, whether it's a mentor or mentee relationship or any relationship, right, you have to build up that relationship and understand the other person who you're talking to. My definition, right, of systemic racism, or what I've seen as an Asian American, living here, may be different from the other person's perspective, right? So it's important, right, when you develop a relationship, that you have to meet, you have to sit down and talk. You can't just do a deep dive right into these issues. You have to build up the relationship by, getting together, building up, sharing personal experiences, sharing, your career experiences, really laying out who you are, laying out your insecurities, laying out, what you've gone through in life, and this applies both ways, so you have to develop that trust in the relationship. And once you do that, then you can have the really hardcore, deep conversations, right, in terms of, for my example, when I'm talking to mentee, right, the mentee is going to know where I'm coming from. And I'm going to understand, a lot of what the mentee tells me is based on their own personal experiences, which I may never have seen. And so then I utilize my experiences as a Chinese American person growing up. My, definition again may be different, but I can use that to apply what I've learned, how I've navigated my, career, right? Been a great career at Covestro and where I'm at a law firm today, and what I've seen, and then use that and, try to, be sensitive and apply what I've learned to what the mentee is telling me. And by doing that, you build up the relationship, and and both of us are just willing to share, we're just like kumbaya, it's like great because you're sharing so much detail. And once you do that, you can build a strategy. You can define, what, the mentor mentee is going through, and then help them navigate it. Sometimes it could be racism. Sometimes it could be other barriers, right? And then use that and then develop a strategy in terms of how to go forward and try to maneuver through the barriers that you see in life, both from a personal and a career side.
Thank you so much, Nolan. So Stephanie, as a mentee, what has been the greatest impact of having a mentor, and how important has it been to you in your leadership development?
So for me, having a mentor was critical. And I've had mentors in the past. And what I've always gained from them is an opportunity to think a little bit differently. So sometimes, we think that we know everything. And then sometimes we understand that we don't know everything, but don't necessarily know who we can trust or who we can go to get advice, or even just to talk through kind of the challenges that we're facing. And so for me, having a mentor, particularly as part of Tally, was a great opportunity to talk about things that either I was experiencing as a leader or was anticipating as a leader, but didn't really understand how to address it. So what I really appreciated about my mentor was that he was a seasoned professional. He had been in a corporate position, in a very high level executive position for many years. And so he gave me a perspective kind of looking from the executive level and saying, here's what I would do, or here's what I have done. And in addition to that, he also gave me some advice as to, if I were in your shoes, these are the things that I would do, or this is how I would challenge your leadership team. So it was interesting to get the perspective of one executive telling me kind of how he would address another executive and how I could use that to my benefit. So it was eye-opening for me. It gave me an opportunity to, really think about my challenge areas, kind of where are my blind spots? Where are the things that I think I know, but don't know, or things that I would have addressed differently, but having had that perspective really helped me to look at it in a different way, which was ultimately a little bit more successful for me. So.
Thank you, Stephanie. That's really, really critical here. Thank you for that insight here. So I really, for both of you, as you think about the next couple questions, how can mentors and mentees stay connected to provide support and development, key relationships within the Pittsburgh community? How do you do that?
I'll go first, Stephanie. So for those of you who know me, right, this pandemic thing is killing me because I like to eat, right? And I can't go out and eat, and meet people, right? And that's tough. You think I would lose weight, but I'm not. I don't know what's going on here. But what's happened is that, during the non-COVID times, right, we would constantly meet, right? You would get together, meet. You would, by building up the relationship, you would know that what your mentee is looking for in terms of, career advancement. What skill sets, do they need? What help do they need to get to the next step? And one of the best things you do is, you set up a meal or a happy hour, and then you bring your network in of colleagues and folks and friends to meet with your mentee, and then you build up this whole network, of helping, and so you can't do that as much today, but what you can do in pandemic days, right, is you do Zoom meetings like we're doing today. And so, what we've been doing is setting up Zoom meetings, texting each other constantly, keeping, connected, setting up Zoom meetings with, instead of having lunches, you do a virtual lunch, right, with your network, so we've been doing a lot more of that. So, and then part of that also is if there are like virtual events, right, like THINC30 or, other type of association meetings, where you think it would be helpful for your mentee, you invite them to that, right, so that they can get connected and meet more people in your network. So in this day and age, more Zooming.
We're Zooming, yeah.
But as a trademark lawyer, I would tell you I can't. I'm improperly using Zooming, so I should say use the Zoom network.
That's great. Thank you so much, Nolan. Stephanie, what's your thought? How do you stay connected?
Yeah, I echo and agree 100% with what Nolan mentioned. But the one thing I would say is it is a deliberate effort. You can't take it for granted that it's going to necessarily happen naturally. And I think that the onus is sometimes on the mentee. You have to kind of ensure that you stay connected to your mentor, and whether that means kind of putting something on your calendar to remind you to reach out, or you and your mentor agree to scheduled times, maybe once a month or once a quarter, or however often is appropriate for that relationship. As a mentor, I think one of the things that helps to kind of keep the mentor and the mentee connected is to invite your mentee to events like this or other events that the mentee may not necessarily otherwise go or attend. So there's you have your circle of activities or your circle of events that you want to attend, but you may not always know that, hey, this event over here is something you need to be a part of. And it's sometimes up to the mentor to introduce that to the mentee, and that's maybe the opportunity they have to meet someone else in the community that they otherwise would not have met. So it's I would sum it up to say it's deliberate. It is something that has to be driven by both the mentor and the mentee, and sometimes you have to think a little bit outside the box, if you will, in terms of what events or what activities would be useful for the mentee.
Thank you so much. So Stephanie, you appreciate your reflections there. So this next question really gets to the heart of one of the core underpinnings of TALI. And so the question is really, what is your understanding of the difference and the value of sponsorship versus mentorship. And love for you to share your thoughts on that question.
I think, Evan, that the Tally program has really taught me a lot. Right, mentorship, right, is taking the time and sitting, and having the lunch and offering guidance, right, to my mentee, right, But the hard part, right, that goes hand in hand is taking the next step, right? And like I can sit back passively and just sit here in my office or in my house and listen. But what am I doing, right, for my mentee, right? Am I doing the extra? And in the past, as a young lawyer growing up person, I didn't understand that, right? And so maybe because I'm older and wiser and I've learned through Tally, right, that, I'm fortunate enough to be more networked, right, in terms of what I'm doing now. I'm fortunate to have some skill sets. What I need to do for my mentee is now take them and bring them along with me, to the next level, right? I need to sponsor them. I need to take them and meet people in the network and even outside the network, right? Hit my network's network, to give as much networking and tools and, the skill sets that my mentee needs. That takes an effort, right? But it's worth it to do that. And so we all need to do that as mentors, right? To take that extra step and sponsor them and be proactive. Because if we're not, then it's a waste for the mentee. It really is, and for the program. But thankfully, I think you've got a set of leaders in all your cohorts, Evan, that have acted as sponsors and leaders. So thank you.
Well, we've been very fortunate to have people like you and Christina Bryant and others who are out there who are really just champions as it relates to big mentors and really demonstrating sponsorship. So thank you for that and what you're doing. Stephanie, what are your thoughts on this?
So I think, the sponsor, I think both relationships are critical. The mentor, to me, is the one who can give you that advice, can help you see through, kind of the fog or the things that just aren't clear to you necessarily. The sponsor is the person, to me, who is actively then trying to get you to that next level. So once you've gotten the advice and hopefully you've taken it because it was good advice that you get from your mentor, you're ready. But it's the sponsor who will then say, I know Stephanie is ready. Let's give her an opportunity in this space. Or if they hear about an opportunity, will say, I know somebody who would be great. Let's reach out and see if she's interested. So the sponsor kind of puts a little bit of their own political capital on the line, if you will, because they're putting, their reputation and their neck on the line saying, I endorse this person. I think this person is great. I think that the mentor is the one who's helping to ensure that that person is great. So those are that's how I think of the difference. And, having had both, and sometimes you don't know who your sponsor is. You know who your mentor is because you're deliberately cultivating that relationship. You may not know who your sponsor is. You may not know who that person was that reached out or that put in a good word for you. And so it's, I think the two are very, very key roles for any person who is looking to, kind of take their careers to that next level and be successful.
And Evan, I'll add into that if you don't mind, right? I think, being a good mentor, right? Having that relationship means that you have to be truthful to each other, right? So at the end of the day, you want to be able to sponsor a mentor, right? But, as a true mentor, right, you need to be able to offer advice, right? Like in terms of here's your blind spots, right? Here's what you need to work on, and things like that, or, here's your strengths, right? And so part of that becomes the complete package, right? That you then, want to help the mentee arrive to the next level, and then in hand in hand, then you sponsor them also, right? So it's part of that relationship you build with, this.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's so important. I mean, you talk about relationship, Stephanie talks about this idea that, you really almost have to earn it, right? People often ask me, because we talk about sponsorship and how important that is. They said, well, why don't you call it executive sponsorship? And the reason we call it executive mentorship is in order to get to sponsorship, you have to build that relationship. And it's something you have to kind of earn through that understanding of relationship. So we can't promise sponsorship. What we can promise is to provide a mentor, in that you and the mentor connect, so that there's that opportunity for sponsorship. And again, when a sponsor is when you're receiving sponsorship, the mentor or sponsor is putting their own political capital on the line. That's their reputation. And so it's something that I believe has to be earned. And so we try to foster that understanding that through the mentorship relationship, we hope that sponsorship will develop. The other thing I'll just quickly share is that it's this idea that it's also really important to have sponsors and mentors, both internally and externally. Those who know the internal environment within the organization, and certainly sponsorship helps you to elevate, particularly the higher up you move in organizations. And so that's one of the things that certainly comes to mind. So absolutely. So there's, before I ask the next question, I did want to just take a quick moment to just recognize some of the Covestro champions of Tally. Covestro has been a supporter from, the very beginning, and we're so pleased at that. People like Tina Clark, who were part of that first cohort as well as people like Stephanie Jasper here. Currently, we have Aaron Lockhart from Covestro, who is in the current cohort, and they both are incredible representatives of the company. Then, of course, you have your executive mentors from Covestro, Christina Bryant, just tremendous. She is at everything, just couldn't be more pleased. And all of you probably know Alita Richards, an executive at Covestro who I've known for many years. And so thank you to you all, Rebecca LaCour, Hakan Johnson, amazing folks. And of course, I have to at least acknowledge the former CEO, Jerry McCleary, who's been very involved and serves as the chair of a co-chair of our executive committee. So thank you to all of you at Covestro and for this important function that you have on today. So let me just throw out this last question here. Overall, what do you think are the highlights and benefits of Tally? You're each coming from a different perspective, cohort perspective, a mentor perspective. What do you feel are the highlights and benefits of Tally from your perspective?
Stephanie this time. Stephanie,
Yeah, sure. Happy to start on this one. So having been part of the first cohort, it's hard to sometimes put into words the number of benefits that you get from participating in the program. So this is the first time that I've been in an executive program that has provided kind of all three pieces of leadership. So we had a mentor that we built a relationship with. We had an executive coach who helped us to, work through those challenging areas that perhaps maybe the hidden blockers that we didn't know that we had that were preventing us from becoming, that next level executive. And then we had the executive learnings coming from, all different types of leaders across academia, both from from CMU to Boston University to Harvard to, all across the country. We had incredible faculty that came in and, gave us introduction and knowledge on leadership topics. Those three pieces are kind of the things that you need to be successful. You need the knowledge, you need the mentorship, and then you need hey, here's how you show up as a leader. So those are kind of the tangible, kind of easy to market type of benefits. I would say that the benefit that was unexpected, but just as important, was the relationship that the cohort built amongst one another. This was a group of 25 people that I am so blessed to have had in my life because we learned from one another. We laughed, we cried, we sang, you name it. We really became kind of a Tally family. And that type of connection is not easily created in an ordinary leadership program. You don't always have that same connection to, a classmate. But I can honestly say that those relationships are relationships that I will have, from now until, the day that we all retire and are on an island somewhere sipping Mai Tais. And even then, we'll still probably be connected. But this was a group of people who were, just like me, very successful, but looking to become, even more successful. And we could share, stories and experiences that were alike, but yet were happening to us individually. And, you felt like you were on an island by yourself, and you realized, hey, you're not. So so that to me was kind of the unexpected benefit that you just can't create with every program. And so that is what I feel is probably what makes one of the other things that makes Tally unique and absolutely worthwhile.
Thank you so much. What a great, I'm inspired when I hear you talk, Stephanie. So thank you so much. Yeah. How about you, Nolan?
Yeah, I'll put a plug in terms of being a mentor. Never realized it, right? But I've grown so much and I've learned so much in terms of being a mentor, where my mentee is mentoring me now. You know what I mean? In many things, and things that I didn't get before, right? In terms of unconscious bias, in terms of systemic racism, which I didn't see. I'm taking that and looking at things differently in terms of the way that I am as an individual and as a person, how I deal with my family, but also in my workplace, right? You look at things totally differently, and that makes me a better leader, I think, and a better manager, right? In terms of my own group and my firm, right? And so, I think that, having that relationship, right, hopefully benefits the mentee, but my God, it really benefits the mentors that are part of the system. So it's a great program.
Wonderful. We're better because of you. So thank you so much, Nolan. So I understand there are a few questions that are coming in here online. So we're happy to try to answer any questions that are out there. So I'm not great at reading chat and answering them. So I will do my best in trying to catch the questions here. So one of the questions appears to be, I guess this one's for me. It says, you were instrumental in founding Tally. Why did you think it was important to start this initiative? And so happy to answer that. So several years ago, actually, I want to say at least 6 years ago, I just remember a number of conversations with some colleagues, African-American colleagues, professionals, and all of us had the same sense of frustration that as a region, it felt like we weren't moving forward in terms of diverse leadership. To some extent, you heard these comments of people feeling isolated. And to some extent, a lot of us felt just that need that we weren't connected or given the same consideration, right? And I think there's a lot of people out there who recognize it. And so the few of us who kind of came together, there was kind of a recognition that, as individuals who have been fortunate enough to be in leadership roles, executive roles, we had a responsibility to figure out, how do we, help to elevate African Americans in Pittsburgh. It's a challenge across the country, but Pittsburgh seemed to have a even deeper challenge because of the overall. Well, I don't want to get into all the potential reasons, but it was a deeper challenge in Pittsburgh when you look at the statistics and that people felt particularly disconnected and underrepresented. And so I really felt that in order to really create a solution, we had to be directly involved in crafting something that would help to take people who have this great leadership already and help take it further and elevate it and shine a spotlight and create deeper connections. What we were trying to solve with Tally, two big issues. One is we were trying to help people to advance within their roles and within the region. And second, we had a number of people who would come to Pittsburgh, didn't feel like that they were had a peer network, and it was felt disconnected. And so the other thing was Tally was really meant to help connect people and ground people and create that social connection so that people had a greater sense of support and being able to kind of inspire each other to be more successful in the region. And so we're trying to address two issues. Again, helping people to advance within their organizations and help people to want to stay in the region because they are connected and feel that there's an opportunity to, for them to want to stay here and for their families to want to be here and to feel supported. So I don't know if that was the best answer to the question, but that's what immediately comes by. I'm looking to see if there's any other questions. I want to make sure the time, are we still okay on time? I believe we are. Oh, we aren't. Okay. I can't see the clock from where I am here. So thank you for that. I see the people say no. So with that being said, since we are out of time, I just want to say thank you so much to Nolan, to Stephanie. You both are amazing people, amazing leaders, and I'm so pleased that you're champions of Tally. And again, we want to thank all the wonderful folks at Covestro. Appreciate everything.
Thank you.
My name is Brian Moyer, and I'm President and CEO of the Greater Nashville Technology Council. The Nashville region has experienced unprecedented growth over the past decade, and like almost every other city in the world, we've struggled with a shortage of tech talent. Over the years, we've implemented a variety of programs focused on K through 12 and post-secondary education designed to introduce our students to the advantages and opportunities of a career in technology. We eventually realized that while our K through 12 and post-secondary programs are important, we needed a way to move faster, to accelerate the growth of our tech workforce. We also believe that part of the answer might be right in front of us. The success from Nashville's exceptional growth has not been enjoyed by all. Large segments of our population have been left behind. Prior to COVID, estimates were as much as 30% of our workforce was underemployed. Many of those underemployed workers have the aptitude to learn a tech skill, but have never had the opportunity. A series of interviews with close to 100 tech employers revealed that attitude and aptitude were more highly regarded than specific tech skills. With that in mind, our foundation launched a tech apprenticeship program 2 years ago to focus on women, veterans, and other minority segments of our population and offer them the opportunity to move into the tech workforce. We work with community partners such as YWCA, Goodwill, the Urban League, Operation Stand Down, and a variety of area churches to get the word out. We look specifically for partners that have members or constituents from the underemployed and overlooked population we want to connect with. The first step for anyone interested in the program is a test to see if they have the aptitude to learn a tech skill. Technology jobs aren't for everyone, and if they don't pass the assessment, we offer alternative suggestions with our community colleges and other programs. If they pass, there's a structured interview process and then introductions to hiring partners. The goal is to match apprentice candidates with hiring partners before the pre-apprentice training, although COVID-19 has forced us to loosen that requirement. The training lasts from 3 to 6 months, depending on the occupation, and then on-the-job mentoring lasts for 1 year. Since launching, we've had 2,200 people apply and take the assessment. Approximately half have passed, indicating they have the aptitude to learn a tech skill. Of those, 25% have been female and 50% have been veterans, with 51% coming from a minority background. We kept the scope of the program small for the first year until we had an opportunity to move through one complete cycle and assess lessons learned. To date, we've graduated 3 cohorts. There have been many learning opportunities, but also many wonderful successes. A couple of examples. Jonathan was driving a truck when he heard about the program. Today, he's completed his apprenticeship and is working for one of our largest employers as a full-time system administrator. Jamaica actually received a computer science degree in college, but was not working in the field because she didn't feel she was ready. After completing her apprenticeship, she's now working as a full-time programmer, finding the structure of the apprenticeship to be exactly what she needed to give her the confidence to succeed. 2 years ago, our board of directors established the big, hairy, audacious goal to double the size of our tech workforce by 2025. We're on our way to achieving that goal, but success will require all existing programs plus more. New boot camps, apprenticeships, internships, and other programs are being added regularly, and we fully support all these efforts. What's most exciting about these programs is not only growing our tech workforce, but the opportunity we have to literally change the face of technology in Nashville. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dina Clark, and I'm Head of Diversity and Inclusion for Covestro's North American region. And I'm excited today, not only because we're part of THINC30, but because we're talking about inclusion. And even though the theme is economic empowerment, you can't talk about one without the other. So I am thrilled to have the panelists here that we have. And I'm going to use my glasses to help introduce them at first. So let's take a look. First and foremost, we have Betty Cruz. Say hi, Betty. Betty assumed her role as president and CEO of the World Affairs Council of Pittsburgh in January of 2020. Prior to joining the council, Betty served as the leader of the Change Agency, a social enterprise which she founded in 2016, and project director for All, an immigrant inclusion initiative. Betty has extensive experience in community outreach, communications, partnership building, and program management, spanning nearly 20 years. She has developed citywide initiatives for the Pittsburgh Mayor, William Peduto, manage major accounts for a national nonprofit dedicated to building playgrounds across the U.S. and supported public relations for global brands representing a wide range of industries. She's on several boards and she's very involved in the community, and I'm thrilled Betty's here, so thank you. We also have Donita Wilson, Vice President of Diversity and Inclusion for JBG Smith. She currently serves there, and it's a S&P 400 company that owns, operates, invests in, and develops a dynamic portfolio of high-quality mixed-use properties in and around Washington, D.C. But Donita is also from Pittsburgh and has been here for over 15 years of strategic diversity and inclusion experience. And upon relocating to DC metro area, she spent 5 years as the global director of D&I for Sodexo, a Fortune 500 company with over 450,000 employees. So I'm really glad she's here. She helped lead D&I efforts for both UPMC and also Highmark. And last but certainly not least, we have Dean James Martin, which I always think is cool to say Dean Martin. James Martin II is the U.S. Steel Dean of Engineering at the University of Pittsburgh, Swanson School of Engineering. Previously, he served as the Banosh? I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Professor and chair of the Glenn Department of Civil Engineering at Clemson University, where he led the development of new curricula, establishment of new degree programs, and forged new transdisciplinary research collaborations both nationally and in China. And what's interesting about the dean is he's internationally recognized for earthquake research. So you're looking at structures. Dean Martin has served as an earthquake engineer consultant on more than 100 major infrastructure projects for global corporations, engineering firms, and government agencies, and has contributed to improving earthquake building code standards in central and eastern U.S. As you can see, we have clearly an esteemed panel. I'm thrilled everybody's here, and I will do my best to stick to questions, but you all know me, and you know I'm going to have a couple of my own, so get ready. So thank you all for being here, and let's dive right in. First and foremost, you can't talk about economic empowerment without talking about inclusion, and you can't talk about it without talking about the workforce. And each of you have sort of your unique approach to looking at inclusion. You're all from a very different backgrounds, different sectors. And so I want to really dive right in and ask you a little bit about what are some of the things you're passionate about when it comes to building an inclusive culture? But I want you to think about it from your lens, from your perspective, and dive right in. And also think about what do you think about inclusion and equity and equality? So let's start with Donita.
Ina, hi. Thanks for having me today.
You're welcome.
To answer your question, I would say, when I think about my approach to diversity and inclusion, it's really about ensuring that everyone has a positive and engaging experience at our company. So for me, it's just a very simple concept of ensuring that people who are at the organization are experiencing the organization in a way that is good for them. And I think that, the focus for me continues to be sustainable cultural and behavioral change. So it's really focusing on all the things that can ultimately help us to create and sustain a diverse and inclusive culture and environment. But most importantly, it's people-centric for me. It's really having the opportunity to talk to people, to understand how people are feeling, how they're experiencing the organization. And I think that from an equity perspective, it's really about looking into your systems, practices, and processes and ensuring that diversity and inclusion is integrated into those. So looking for the opportunities to make sure that you're doing things inclusively, that you're making inclusive decisions, but more importantly, that you're setting up the systems and structures to allow you to do that at the organization.
Nice. And I know that you're passionate about it, so that's a lot of under that umbrella of inclusion. So thank you for sharing. And you mentioned systems, which is something I know that Dean Martin has also focused on. So I'd love to hear from you again, not only passion, but maybe your lens through systems in D&I and certainly looking at inclusion and equity. So let's hear from you.
Well, thanks so much, Dana.
You're welcome.
Although I'm called Dean Martin, I won't be a crooner this morning. When I think about really what we're talking about, diversity and equity, inclusion, education and being at a universities are public goods. They really should serve as platforms of upward social mobility. And that really is the place where we have trajectories being started. It makes so much difference as to developing. If you want to see what the future community looks like, look in who is in the universities now, and that's where a lot of futures are being created. And you talked about economic prosperity. You talk about where this country is going. If we look at our workforce, if we look at the workforce of the future, by 2050, we're going to have a workforce that's going to be primarily non-majority. And what it means is that we'll be able to, if everyone is participating in our workforce, we'll be able to add $8 trillion to our GDP and really increase the security of this country. And I should say, 2/3 of the workforce is going to have some form of college education. And also, if you look at the pipelines of who's there, we simply haven't developed access to everybody. So we're actually going to have a huge gap to fill still to get everybody there for the workforce of the future.
Yeah, and what better better place to really focus on all the specific needs than, within an educational institution around what the workforce needs, but then certainly drifting over. So thank you for sharing that. And Betty, hi. You are now taking on a worldview, but from a Pittsburgh perspective. So I'd love to hear what your thoughts are, because again, we are in a global economy, regardless of where you're seated. And so I'd love to hear from you.
Thanks again for the opportunity, Dina. I think for me, it's all the personal and the professional is interconnected. So for me personally, it's about representation, and that comes from my own roots with my parents and their struggles as Cuban immigrants. The dean talked about education. I'm a first-gen college grad, so I think about these different worlds coming together and coming from a background that was not privileged at all, and now recognizing I'm someone who has privilege, and how am I using that? So really always bringing that lens into this space. And then professionally, a few years ago, I had the chance to participate in the Racial Equity Institute, a couple of trainings of theirs, and it just changed my framework. It changed the way I looked at things, including as I was doing the immigrant inclusion work with All for All, and prior with that in the mayor's office. It really centered my lens on the Black American experience and seeing that we need to solve for the injustices that have happened for generations, for hundreds of years. And when we solve for that, when we actually finally do right, we solve for everyone else. It's better for everyone else. It's better for LGBT community members. It's better for women. It's better for people who are experiencing disabilities, because at the end of the day, if you're a Black American, and obviously I'm referencing the lens through the States, your experience has been oppressed more than anyone's. So if we solve for the Black American experience, we also improve the lives for everyone else. So really looking at this bookend of you have white privilege and you have the Black American experience, and how are we going to address that? That's something that fires me up and really grounds me. And to your question on equity and inclusion and equality, I think ultimately it's, equity is the destination, and it is rooted in power. So it's not just about who's in the room. It's not just about if that person has a seat at the table, but are they actually recognized and rewarded and shaping the change? Are we really listening to them and giving them the power?
There are excellent points, and I appreciate your perspective as well, because it all ties in certainly to what we're talking about. And you mentioned sort of what's going on now. 2020 has been a pivotal year. I would say those of us all on this call, and certainly beyond this call, hopefully many of our listeners understand that racial injustice has been a challenge prior to COVID, prior to economic challenges, and certainly prior to George Floyd and the killing that occurred. And so what I really want you all to think about and share and maybe weigh in on is, considering the climate that we're in, and with COVID and racial justice being on the forefront for a lot of reasons, and we also have an upcoming election, think about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and what does it look like in these unprecedented times from your lens, from your perspective in the work that you're doing, and maybe even some tidbits of how you're handling all of these uncertainties during this year? It's a loaded question, but take whatever piece you'd like. And let's start with the dean.
Well, good. Yeah, this has been a pivotal year for us, and I should say, higher education is the biggest advances in higher education and the development of this country has always occurred after major social disruption. If we look after the Civil War, when we were starting Reconstruction, that's when we had great land-grant universities with the acknowledgement that we needed to get education to the masses. And then we came along in World War II. And the reason why we had so much prosperity during World War II, if you look at the periods from the 50s to the 80s, we had 20 million women entering the workforce that were never in the workforce before. There was a tremendous increase in GDP. We also had the GI Bill. So access to education and access to the workforce has always led seismic shifts, and higher education has always advanced during those times. We will look back at this time, and that occurs about every century. And so we will look back at this time at a major seismic shift also in higher education. We've got to increase access. The cost of education has increased 400% relative to household income over the last 35 years. And of course, underrepresented students are the ones that are asymmetrically affected. And let me just say also, the reason this is also important, not just because of economic perspective and a social good, if you look at some of these disruptive changes, if you want to change a region, if you want to change a city, a nation, a state, change a community and the way the community learns. If you can change the learning patterns in our community, that's how you really undergo social change. So we're looking at programs like not only reaching out to more students that have not had access, because they've always been ready for us. We just haven't been ready for them. The way we admit and the way we do lots of things are based largely on affluence. So we really are being aggressive with the way that we reach out and cultivate our students. But we really have to do a better job to start that trajectory. But we can educate entire families instead of just focus on one student. This COVID crisis has given us the ability to, if you look at families learning together, we can do those kinds of things and have platforms for lifelong engagement. And those are some of the things that I think will be revolutionary in the way that universities operate going forward.
I love it. It's more of a holistic approach. It makes complete sense to me. Betty, what do you think in terms of engaging sort of not just community, but through the lens of COVID on a global scale, or Elise, the perspective from the World Affairs Council?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's a reckoning, right? This moment, the combination of the different pandemics, the global health pandemic, the racial injustice uprisings, the educational pandemic of how the entire system has been disrupted. And for us at the World Affairs Council, we are trying to seize the moment and make our programs see the changes that we've long wanted to see, and really use this as a chance to accelerate that change. So whether that means that now everything being virtual, our programs are now so much more accessible in terms of cost, in terms of when and how you plug in. But I would say more importantly, when we're looking at, again, how do we center the experiences of underrepresented people? By default, most often when you're looking for subject matter experts, when you're looking for, who you're going to shine the light on to learn from, it's easiest to find the list of folks from around the world. Those names that surface to the top typically are white and are male, whatever part of the world we're dealing with in many cases, right? You even have experts in continents that are brown and black, and the experts that are typically speaking are white and male. So it takes work. And if you don't do it now, when are you going to do it? What are you waiting for? But it takes the effort to make sure that you're finding the subject matter experts that are representative of different races and identities and genders and cultures, because they're out there too. They just haven't been given the stage. They just haven't been heard, but their voices are real and present. So I think really that is the approach for us. It's not just finding and amplifying the stories around the world that are happening right now, how folks are navigating this moment and uplifting that and building a bridge between Pittsburgh and the world, but also making sure that when we're telling those stories and shining the light, we're hearing directly from the communities that we're talking about.
That's critical, and certainly finding the best and brightest talent is directly linked to economic empowerment. So that makes complete sense, and I know that's been on the forefront of corporate America too. And I know Donita and I both know how busy corporations have been during this time, prior and I'm sure beyond. So I'd love to hear your perspective from a corporate space.
So I would say, I've been leveraging, this opportunity and what's happened externally to continue to raise awareness about the importance of diversity and inclusion in the workplace. But specifically, one of the things that I've paid a lot of attention to is the intentionality that people are now putting behind promoting Black people, advancing Black people, putting them on boards. This newfound intentionality is an interesting thing, because if you think about it, it's 2020. The people that we're doing this for, they didn't just now become qualified and experienced enough to serve in these roles and in these capacities in organizations. So the question becomes, are people reacting and responding to what's happening? And are they doing this for the moment? Or will they be continuing to do it, a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now? So I think for me, what's been very important, especially at the executive level of the organization, is having these conversations about the intentionality and making sure that same intentionality is part of our strategy moving forward. Because just as we, and you're seeing a lot of companies make these decisions to all of a sudden say that these folks deserve to have these positions, they deserve to be promoted, we need more people of color and more representation on our boards. That didn't just happen in 2020, just didn't happen in the last 6 months. I mean, that's something that needed to happen for years. So it'll be interesting to see how this holds up and how people sustain that intentionality. And that's one of the things that I've been really leveraging, is the opportunity to have those conversations and utilize the things that are happening and the things that we're seeing as a way to introduce those conversations to the people that need to hear it. Because I think the other thing is, we spend a lot of time as diversity and inclusion leaders in corporate having the conversations within our respective spaces about what we need, but the right people aren't at the table to hear it. So if the Black people are sitting around and having a roundtable discussion about what Black people need, and the people that you need to hear what you need are not there, you're still in the same space when that conversation ends. So I think this is the opportunity to really reach out and provide your organization with the leadership and the education and awareness to understand what their role is in continuing this effort and continuing the intentionality, so that you're able to ultimately impact change longer term.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And it's critical now to light the fire under people, to really not only engage people, but to start to bring people together and leverage diversity and inclusion, no matter what aspect you're coming together from. It could be whatever sector you're in, whether you're in, even if you're doing just community volunteering or a student in high school. And I've seen more opportunities to really, really, really not only raise awareness, but educate and inspire. And with that said, you all know how I feel about passion work. You all are impressive leaders, and I'm glad that you all are here, but I want to know what's in your heart. And I want to know that, because the heart of this work is around inclusion and bringing people together to do this important work. So I'll ask one more question, and it's really about, what is some of your sort of passion-aligned advice on bringing communities together and the importance of contributing to a more inclusive and equitable environment? And let's start with Betty this time.
Sure. It kind of ties back to Donita's point, in that, like, sometimes we do this work or corporations, nonprofits, all of us, we might have some curiosity. You take some initial steps, you hire someone, and then you kind of stop there, and you don't remember that, as was said earlier, there's a whole system, right? We are conditioned in this white-centric system where you might be conducting practices using language that are even oppressive, and you don't even realize it. So really just recognizing that the step that you're taking today, or that step that maybe you took recently, that's one step. And this is a lifelong journey. So I think, to me, the passion and the awakening for me has been, this is a lifelong journey. This is not something that's going to be solved with one training or with one hire. So I guess when I think about that, the importance of doing the work, right? So we have to do the work and recognize that doesn't have an end date. We also need to be in the last thing I think I'll say about this that really has me fired up, because I've had so many conversations this year that have surprised me. And it's not, I guess, a surprise, right? White fragility is real, and it's real across cultures too. I don't mean this just, anti one particular group, but we need to be open and aware of our complicity in this oppression. And it's not, and with that openness, then can come the understanding, and then can come the work. But we need to be open and recognize that we have been, if you're a white presenting person like I am, even though I'm a proud Latina, I am part of, that has benefited from these systems of oppression. So it's really critical to not take it personal in that way, but to see that and then do something and keep doing many things thereafter.
Yeah. And to unapologetically have a voice that keeps going too.
Yeah.
And I see it and I can feel it, and I appreciate the energy. And I'm going to ask that energy to continue with Donita, and tell me what you feel in a corporate space, but bring your passion into it in terms of inclusive environment. What's your perspective and recommendation?
So I would say, one of the things that I really focus on in an organization is allowing people to experience, the workplace in a way that they feel empowered and appreciated, no matter what level they are at the organization, because I think it's important. I think some of what we lose sight of, when we're in senior level roles, is what are the frontline folks experiencing? What is everyone in between experiencing? And giving people the opportunity to have a voice, to share their perspectives, to have dialogue and conversation around, what we can do to create a more inclusive and welcoming environment for them. But also, what can we do to ensure that everyone feels that sense of connectedness, belonging when they're in the workplace. So for me, my passion is really around ensuring that everyone has a voice, ensuring that people have the opportunity to, provide their input and their perspectives on, the decisions that we're making as an organization that ultimately impact them. Because oftentimes we sit around the table and we make decisions about, things that are going to impact people, but the people impacted are not a part of those conversations. Yep. And for me, that's one of the things that I, really am passionate about, is ensuring that, we give our employees an opportunity to have a voice, that we utilize their feedback and their insights to inform the strategy and how we're going to move things forward, and that they ultimately see through the actions that, that we're demonstrating at the organization that their voice was heard. So I think that's important as D&I leaders, is that we have to always be thinking about how people are impacted in our organization, but most importantly, what are people experiencing at your organization, and how are they talking about that when they leave, or how are they talking about that to their friends and family? Because ultimately, you want people to have experiences that are going to encourage them to tell other people that your company is a great place to work, and that you can advance, and that you can do well, and that you're supported, and that you're empowered, to do the work that you want to do. But that's really how you want people to be talking about your organization. So for me, it's very much about creating excellent employee experiences while people are at our company.
Absolutely. And the voice often starts in college, and sometimes sooner, sometimes later, but you're nurturing that voice at Pitt, certainly, and you're setting the tone as a leader. So I'd love to also hear from the team.
Well, I think what Betty and Donita just described is how sectors, especially the corporate sectors, in many ways, with D&I, are ahead of where universities are. Most universities are judged on excellence and merit and factors that really measure affluence. It's really affluence per student, so to speak. And as a result, we've become too elitist to really be public goods in the way that we should. So we've got a lot to learn by partnering with the corporate community to see how we can better affect change. And I think what Donita just described, we focused on, I think the best organizations have to be able to see and sense themselves, especially leadership. I think we can sometimes see ourselves as an organization, but we have to see and sense what our organization is feeling. So we focus on intercultural competence, and we focus on that. We have indices and tools developed. Every leader in the organization in my unit, they're not judged on typical output metrics. They're also judged on intercultural competent development. We put a lot of focus on that. And really what motivates me, you talk about the passion, is I just feel if we look at human potential, human potential is just so universal. Learning is so universal. Studies show if you can start them on an upward trajectory to learning, that continues for the whole lifetime. I've always said, if we treat people, humans, just like we do equipment, if we purchase a piece of equipment and we have that on our balance sheet, we make sure that equipment has all of the maintenance and all of the service. We do everything for that equipment to really provide the best performance to move our organizations forward. We need to do that with people as well. The question is, are we doing what we're supposed to do for the places of work? And in this case, the universities. Are we doing everything to maximize human potential for everyone to be their best self? And the question is right now, are we willing to commit to make the hard commitments to do that? And we certainly are working hard at it.
That's good to hear, and music to my ears, because all of this is necessary. It looks like we have time for probably one question from the audience. I want to be respectful of everyone's time, but the question is, how do you continue to make your employees, or students in this case, feel included when working remotely is the norm right now? And you guys anybody can jump in if you like. How do you make people feel included in this different new normal?
Well, for us, we have developed a number of tools and events that we normally wouldn't have to reach different kinds of students. We've had a number of events, and we also have looked at social scientists and gotten social scientists in to get us to understand what this new environment really means from a technical standpoint and a research standpoint, to give us a sense of community. It's a big challenge.
Thank you. And any other comments to add? Because it is a challenge.
I would say, Dina, what we're really looking at is leveraging this time to think about what people really want and need to be successful virtually and when we get back to the office. But I think some of what we're focusing on virtually is also going to have a positive impact, on our company when we come back, because now we're learning that people can work virtually. People do can still thrive and can still be engaged and connected and do well virtually. So what we're continuing to do is raise that awareness, make sure that people have opportunities to connect. We're basically creating those platforms for dialogue, for people to talk and to engage with one another, but also continuing to think of what are new ways that we can, connect people in this virtual space, in this virtual environment, and have it be something that is sustainable for moving forward as well. So
awesome. All great advice. I want to thank each of you for being here as panelists. I would encourage the THINC30 listeners to connect with each of these amazing people individually, because they do bring passion and purpose and intentionality to this very important topic. And certainly we want to drive things forward. So thank you again to everyone. Enjoy the rest of your week and enjoy the rest of THINC30. Take care.
Thank you.
So it looks like, are we back? Are we ready to go? It looks like we are.
Hi, Jonathan.
All right, everybody. the joys of Zoom and not quite knowing when you're going to start, but it's all good as far as that is. I'm so honored to be here. This is Jonathan Kirsting. I'm with the Pittsburgh Technology Council, and I was really honored when Covestro asked me to host this session. And when they asked me to pick somebody, I thought, like, who would be someone that would just really represent someone that's just really doing it right in Pittsburgh, that has a great story to tell. And Jen was literally the first person I thought of. I reached out to her, and she immediately said yes. So I got super pumped up. And so I think we're going to have a great conversation today. And I think what you're going to learn from Jen, I think it's just very inspiring. And the one thing that I have learned over my 23 years at the Pittsburgh Tech Council, I've literally interviewed thousands of people across Pittsburgh's tech ecosystem over the past 2 decades. And the biggest problem has been there's not enough women, there's not enough people of color when it comes to technology in general, not just in Pittsburgh, but around the world. And I mean, I don't need stats to give you, I don't have to give you stats and everything like that. I know the numbers because I see it every single day. We all know there's not enough representation going on. And the Pittsburgh Tech Council is really putting it into overdrive to really try to ramp things up, everything from the STEM level all the way down to people that are in the trenches like Jen every day, building companies. So without any further ado, Jen Yosef, thank you for joining me today. I am so excited about our conversation because you have a very unique story. And I think we got to start with really, like, you're an engineer by trade and you made the flip to becoming an entrepreneur. That's a great story behind that. Let me know what's going on about that.
Absolutely. Well, Jonathan, first, always so great to see you. Thank you for thinking of me to be part of this, and I'm certainly very excited for our conversation today. You know, it's certainly it's been a very interesting journey from moving from being an engineer to an entrepreneur, and I think when I look back at that journey, right, and when I was an engineer, we are always trained to be very much programmatic in a sense. Like, you're a problem solver, you are technically very proficient at what you're doing, working at these large corporations, everything is very secure, but you're in a little box too, right? Like, you can be creative, but you got to stay in that box. You got to understand those limitations. And I always wanted to break those parameters. And that really is what led me into the journey of entrepreneurship and then running this tech company. And there's been some similarities, but then there's been stark differences. And there's certainly been some hard challenges that I've had to overcome. I think, just in general, where leaving that very secure comfort, where you're contributing well to society, why take this risk? Why jump into something like this? And I mean, some of the similarities, obviously, that come into play is I've always been required to solve complex problems, right? And when difficult situations have arisen, we need to go forward and do that. And I was able to translate that into my journey as an entrepreneur. But then there's very little structure. With a startup,
engineers need structure. They build structures.
Yes. And my personal background, right, having studied a lot in the structural engineering aspect, yes, it has to be a very structured path. But then when you come into this world, it's completely different. Every single day, it's going to be something new.
Yeah, so you bring these two really cool skill sets of, like, you got this discipline of an engineer, and then you got the heart of an entrepreneur because you want to bust out and do stuff. So how did you find Mighty? You became the CEO of Mighty. I know you weren't the founder of Mighty, but you basically are scaling this company as if it is your own startup. Tell us how you kind of came into Mighty, and tell us about what Mighty does, because your solution, I think, is a really cool solution. As someone that's bought a couple houses, you address some really cool problems.
Yes. So I learned about Mighty through a friend, advisor, mentor, one of my favorite people, Jacob Hanshaw, who's actually on my board right now. And he's the one that told me that he's like, I think you really need to look at this company. And that's how I got involved in Mighty in the early days. And then from there, basically became the CEO and have really taken Mighty as my own and super excited about the potential of what this company has and how it's been growing. But our solution is very simple, right? identify that inspections is a big stressful issue and something that's very important that comes in every single real estate transaction. And you get this report that tells you the health of your house, all these issues, but then you don't really have somebody that is dissecting that information and telling you what things cost, because that's really what the home buyer and seller really need to understand and know. And that's where we come in the picture.
It's a great solution. And it's been so much fun watching you as you stepped in there and really building this company forward. So tell me, give us the good, the bad, and the ugly. I never want to be Pollyanna about Pittsburgh because it has as many challenges as it does opportunities. What have been the upsides and the downsides of building and scaling Mighty, especially in the Pittsburgh area?
Yeah, so I think some of the challenges that exist in the Pittsburgh region in general, I'd say, is the fact that there is a lot of cloning that is happening. That people kind of don't really see. They want to be able to identify with people that look like them, right? And we've seen that in a lot of other places too. Definitely. But I think here there is this. There is a trend where you're following companies that have some sort of a trend going on. So there's this double trend issue that I've noticed is where you see a lot of the individuals following or investing in companies that just feel very much similar to what they would imagine would be successful, right? Versus looking at companies in a much more holistic manner. And we are, being in a space that we are already in, it's unique, right? The real estate market is different. But I think one of the aspects that we've certainly noticed, that I've certainly very much noticed, is the fact that these challenges of the fact that these individuals are really identifying and seeing companies that they think that are going to be able to solve the problems are the ones that they should really change that mindset on and be able to identify and really look at companies in a much more holistic manner is one of the challenges I think that currently exists. I mean, on the upsides of Pittsburgh, right? As we tap into more like Pittsburgh's innovation scene, I think one of the things is Pittsburgh Tech Council is doing a great job, right? That you guys are very much engaged with startups. You're very much engaged with making sure that these companies have the resources that they need. So those are definitely two of the things that I think are very, very positive about the fact that Pittsburgh's ecosystem is growing.
I love that answer because we're trying our best. That is for sure. And I mean, it's got to be doubly hard building it's hard enough building a company as it is. I don't care who you are, but I feel like if you're a woman, if you're a minority, obviously it's going to be all the more difficult. And those are some of the things that Tech Council we're trying to help eradicate. And what's your experience been like that? Have you felt like people not taking you as seriously because you're a woman? What's it been like?
Yes. I mean, that's the unfortunate part, right? Is I think that for myself personally, I've definitely had much more pushback. I've definitely been challenged on things that I have a very in-depth understanding on. Like, I understand this market inside out, right? I've been embedded in this space. I know that, but I think it really becomes a problem when it's unnecessary challenges. I'm always up for constructive feedback, but when you are doing a pushback just for the reason because I don't necessarily fit in a mold of somebody that should be running a real estate construction tech kind of space, right, and that's when it becomes an issue.
Dang you for not fitting into a mold. How dare you? That's not fun. Come on. Just kidding. So let's talk more broadly about Pittsburgh's innovation landscape and where it needs to go. I mean, as you're in this running day in and day out, you're seeing firsthand what we need. What are the top priorities in order to ensure our vitality?
I would say, I think one of the biggest things is retention of talent. So we already know, and I think this is something that a lot of individuals and a lot of discussions have happened around the fact that we are very good at attracting talent. But then the question that arises is what kind of talent, right? Are we making Pittsburgh, and are we saying that Pittsburgh is a place that is welcoming and retaining talent of all sorts of different backgrounds. Because I think the challenge kind of comes into play, and this goes back to what I was sharing, where people are, there's a lot of that cloning that the word that I use is because are we saying that when we are looking at diverse students, when we're looking at diverse talent, diverse individuals that are coming in, are we making Pittsburgh a place that is going to continuously retain them? We obviously have a ton of positive in terms of the fact that companies like Facebook, Uber have some strong offices here. We've got continuously more companies that are getting built here, but really, in summary, are we doing a good enough job making sure that talent stays here?
What are your thoughts on how we can be more welcoming? Because my thing is, we need people from around the world coming to Pittsburgh. I mean, talent is everywhere, and we need the best and the brightest. And I get concerned sometimes. I feel like I feel like parts of Pittsburgh can be very insular sometimes, and people, you say, it can be the whole clone thing almost as if you're talking about it. How can we make sure that when someone arrives here, that they feel welcome, they feel plugged in, they feel like they're part of something, and they feel like they have maneuverability and can live a life in Pittsburgh?
It's, I wish there was like a simple answer for that, right? It's going to take a lot of different organizations. It's going to take a lot of different individuals. But I think one thing that I can say is each one of us needs to be contributing to that. Each one of us needs to make an effort to go out there and reach out to those students or reach out to those individuals. Or, a ton of times it is really students, right? That kind of are coming in and they are, and that's kind of like the talent that we need to retain as well. So in general, there is, community efforts are big play in terms of making sure that we are welcoming these individuals. I think companies, right? Companies need to do more in terms of making sure that, are we creating inclusive and safe spaces for these individuals? So that's another primary driver that's going to make sure that these individuals actually stay in Pittsburgh.
Absolutely. I knew this was going to be a tough interview just because we had such little time. I know there's so much for us to talk about. We only have a few minutes left. And I want to get to something that is really important to me, important to the Tech Council, and I hope it's important to everybody out there, is inspiring the next generation of women to get into tech. It just blows my mind when I see how few women are in tech. And I feel like we're leaving some really smart minds behind. And I know you got to get in front of girls very, very young to really show them this is something you can do. What are your thoughts on that, Jen?
So that is something I'm certainly very passionate about. And I think that one thing that I make it a priority in my life is to give back on that. So whether it's mentoring college students or it's mentoring middle school, high school students, I am involved in both of those. So one of them, one of my mentees is a student at CCAC. From church, I have a group of young individual girls that I have an opportunity to mentor. So that is how I've been able to really stay involved and engaged in that.
Good stuff. And I think it's so important that everyone just gets a little, in some way, it just kind of builds that foundation. And at the Tech Council, we're starting a thing called Launch. We're taking a cohort of, I believe, 15 girls and running these programs to empower and show them the opportunities that are out there. And we're just putting this into overdrive. And I just think it's so important because I always say we need 1,000 more Jen Yosefs here in Pittsburgh doing what you're doing. So we've got about a minute left. Any kind of parting thoughts, once again, just about Pittsburgh in general, just getting everybody together, trying to get everybody included and brought along for the ride that tech is providing us right now?
Yes, in general, I think we've got such potential, right? And we're making headway, we're making progress. I think discussions like this are very important. Thank you to THINC30 for hosting things like this. So all those things are going to make sure that these conversations are happening and there's actionable ways that we are actually doing something about it. In closing, I would just say, each one of us needs to play our part. Each one of us needs to contribute. And that's the only way we can continue making Pittsburgh a great city that it already is.
I couldn't agree more. And that's like everyone's got to play a little bit of a role. We're trying to do the tech council. I'm trying to do what I do by trying to tell stories. You're doing what you're doing. I mean, if we could all get together and have more things like THINC30, which I think is just foundational to having us all kind of move everything forward, I think is just so important. I was so honored to be part of this today. The time went by so fast, Jen. I could ask you so many more questions about what you're doing, but I think you really turned over some really good stones for us. Thanks for taking the time and spending it with us here today, Jen. You're the best.
Thank you so much for having me, Jonathan.
Wow. So that brings us to the close of day 3 of THINC30. Thank you again to all of our attendees and speakers and panelists. It's been so great to have you all here. I'm kind of sad it's coming to a close, but I know based on all the questions and the engagement and on all the great dialogue that we're going to continue these discussions into next year and this important work. It makes me feel really good about Pittsburgh and about the leadership here and organizations and everyone, because you're all so passionate and have so much purpose and so excited about the work that you do. And that's so important to keep these great conversations going. And that's what we want to do. But before we do, let me tell you that we will be following up with everyone that was registered and participated in each of our sessions starting last week. We aren't going to let these conversations go. We will be in touch with you. We will have the survey as well for you to fill out and tell us about how we did in terms of content and programming and technicalities as well. But right now, we'd like to ask you to join us for a few more minutes. If you go into your chat window, there should be a link there from my colleague, Ben, and you can use that link to go out into a breakout. It'll be one breakout room. That will be your opportunity to continue discussions, talk about what's on your mind, what you heard today, what you would like to see. I also encourage you to go into the chat button at the bottom and also leave any questions or any other topics that you want to continue to learn more about. We do ask our speakers to go in and sometimes answer some of that right in the chat button, and we do capture all of that. And that can be part of the follow-up when we do reach back out to you sometime in the next 2 weeks. Thank you again to my team, to Covestro leadership, to everyone who worked behind the scenes to pull off this first ever virtual event for us, 3 events, I should say. We're really glad that you spent some time with us, and we re-encourage you to attend the chat session following this. And again, the link is right in the chat button there. Thanks again, everyone. Be safe, be healthy.